Welcome to the MBR show, and we've got a packed edition for you today as the bike industry seems to have decided to launch a million different bikes and products all at the same time. Coming up, we've got the new sparkly gold Fox Forks, the return of Mondraker's Dune enduro bike, two wild new e-bikes from Norco, an updated Forbidden Dreadnought, and Rocky Mountain's latest altitude enduro bike.
So Danny, you went to Sintra, I've ridden there, riding's pretty amazing. How was the new Mondraker Dune?
It was great.
Just hit me with the facts.
All right, it's an e-enduro bike. It's got 165mm rear travel, the Bosch SX motor, mullet wheels, 3 models.
Okay, pretty simple, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty fancy build we've got here. I mean, how much does that bike weigh? It is supposed to be a lightweight enduro e-bike, right?
Okay, so this on the scale is 19.93 kilos. With pedals, over 20
Pretty
kilos.
similar. I mean, I weighed the Heckler SL the other week for a video. It was 19 point something, whatever. The white E-Light's 150 bike, it's 19 point something. So they're all in that kind of ballpark, right? Once you've got proper tires and bits on them, and that's got a coil shock, so there's a little bit of extra weight there.
Exactly, yep.
How did it ride?
I really, really enjoyed riding this bike.
I mean, Sintra is an amazing spot though, right?
It is an amazing spot, but I've also ridden it back home on my home trails, and I've ridden it in South Wales as well, in some good enduro tracks. So yeah, I didn't just have the kind of like holiday romance there, you know. It's a really agile bike. What I love about these sorts of bikes are the experience is so close to an analog bike, an analog enduro bike. But it's not like pedaling a 17 kilo bike up the hill under your own steam.
I actually think the good part of the experience is closer, and the bad part of the experience is quite different.
It's way better.
Way
exactly.
better,
I'm talking about the downhill performance is much
similar.
more like an...
Well, I'd even go as far as to say it's better up and down.
Yeah.
It's just cut through it. It's a better option all right.
More expensive?
Bloody expensive. How much is that bike?
This is 12K.
So again, same kind of price point as the Kenevo SL S-Works bike, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, there's not many bikes in that category, which is interesting. We've got loads of lightweight SL e-bikes in the trail 150 category, but very few brands are pumping out these kind of 160, 170 long travel bikes.
I think it's because they're worried about the weight. They all want to get the weight down to certain 17, 18 kilos. Otherwise people are like, well, why would I buy a 20 kilo bike with less power? You know, but you need to ride these bikes. That's the key, is that looking at the numbers doesn't really give you the full story. When you ride them, you get the full experience and you can see why they make sense. We're going to put this up against the Kenevo SL and we'll do like a way more in-depth kind of look at them. Okay, so Al, talking about 16 odd kilo enduro analog bikes, you've been riding the new Forbidden Dreadnought in the Forest of Dean.
Yeah, so Dreadnought V2. It's got a lot of the changes we've seen kind of come through on the Druid and on the Supernaut downhill bike. So you've got an inverted 4-bar design on the rear instead of a single pivot. It's got 160mm travel now, and it's 160mm because it's vertical, measured vertically, not measured along the axle path, so it's not a fudge. The key difference on that bike though is it's now got modular dropouts. So that's something that they've taken directly from the downhill bike. Okay. And it's kind of cool because on the old bikes, you'd have to either get a new Ziggy link, or on the Druid, you get a swing arm or whatever to change between MX and 29. This bike, you just swap the dropouts.
Okay.
You don't get 100% correction for geometry. So the MX bike's still a little bit lower on the BB height, a little bit slacker. But what's interesting, it doesn't change the chainstay length and the front center ratio. So the weight bias on the bike stays the same. But you can still change the weight bias because the bikes come with, I think they're calling the 0 position. And then when you've got the MX rear wheel, you can go 10mm shorter or 10mm longer on the rear by swapping the dropouts. And on the 29er, you can go 10mm longer on the rear.
Okay. And they made the back end longer, have they?
They did. So the static chainstay length is 460, and you can go to 470 if you want with 10mm longer chainstays on the 29er.
And does that extend
it does extend
as well?
Yeah, it extends in sight. And what's really cool is that the old bike was like that. It's not that different to the old bike, but on the old bike, the front end was too low because when you've got a long chainstay, what you want to do is you want to stand up and be back. Yeah, so because the chainstay pushes your weight forward, so to center yourself on the bike, you need to be high up. So what they did was they increased the stack height.
Yep.
And they've got size-specific bars, so you can kind of you can run the bars like still full height, and the bike just feels totally normal, and you can load it on flat turns and stuff. So I spent a day in the Forest of Dean, a day at Bike Park Wales. Like they've done a great job with it. The key difference is it's tighter. It's got a tighter suspension response. So when you stand up to sprint, it pedals better. It's got more support. it's still got that like through rim dinger. It's still like it's just
on all the square edge
all the
hits.
square stuff. It's amazing. But now like you can preload the suspension, pick it up, move it around. Yeah, I really like riding it.
So is it better than the old bike?
Yeah, V2, 100% better than V1.
There you have it.
Sintra, Danny, isn't the only place you've been sunning yourself recently. You've been in California, right?
Yeah, went out to Santa Cruz to see Fox. You can't fail to have seen the explosion of gold forks that they've unleashed on the world in the last couple of weeks. The thing is, they're not the first people to do it, right?
Yeah.
It seems to be every 10 years or so we get gold forks.
Yeah,
right?
You sent me that photo from the launch. I was like, oh, that looks like an old silo. For anyone that's like not as old as us and they're watching the show, explain to them like when the silo came out and what it was.
Well, maybe I should go even further back, because the original RockShox Mag 21 in 1992 had gold lowers, and then about 10 years later, well, not quite 10 years later, 2001, they came out with the silo, which was gold lowers, gold uppers, and a gold crown. It was full gold.
The thing is, the silo was kind of like, it had this Tulio thing too, didn't it? It had this kind of, it was the first quick release bolt through fork. If I was going to compare it to a fork, I'd say it was the Lyric of the time, right?
It was kind of the hard-hitting trail enduro all-mountain fork.
It was a cool product.
It was. It sort of changed the game, and they did like one where you could screw down and change the travel
and stuff,
and everything. So it was on a hell of a lot of bikes. It was a really good fork. So that was one. But actually, then Fox, about another 10 years later, they did a gold lowers on a special edition for Trek. Shout out to Bike Perfect for digging that out. Okay. It just seems to come in cycles. But this year is an Olympic year, right? So Paris Olympics, it's a big thing for XC Racing. And they've got quite a well-known fast rider on Fox Forks, and that's Mathieu van der Poel.
Yeah.
They're obviously looking for some good coverage in that race. There's going to be a lot of eyeballs on it. So we're going to see him almost certainly on the new 32 step cast fork. They're hoping he's going to win. It might be a little bit awkward if he doesn't win, if he gets silver or something.
Racing doesn't always go the way you plan, right?
It doesn't, right? But yeah, that leads me on to one of the other new products they've got is this new XC fork. One of the interesting things about that, it's got a rear-mounted brace. So again, we're looking back in time.
Can I say it's got a reverse arch? Or is that what Manitou called?
Yeah,
they didn't want to call it that because it's probably still got like copyright.
Yeah, they haven't really got like a buzzword for it, but Fox haven't anyway. So, but yeah, it is harking back to previous bygone eras. But there's a really good reason for a rearward arch. Where the wheel arc goes behind the fork, it's a shorter distance from the seals or from the lowers for the brace, isn't it? So you can make
shorter brace, stiffer brace, lighter brace, whichever you want.
Less material, exactly, yeah. So especially when you're doing an XC fork, it makes 100% sense.
Yeah, but the reason why they've got that is because the patent expired, right?
Exactly. Expired in 2021, and in 2022, Fox actually brought out a gravel fork with a rear-mounted arch, which, not following gravel, I didn't realise
either.
So
yeah, we've got our finger in the pulse, right?
Yeah, exactly. So not the first one they've done. And obviously, Pace did it before Manitou.
Yeah, because Pace had prior art on the patent that Manitou had.
Exactly. Yeah. So everyone's been kind of figuring out ways to get around these things, and a lot of it's just down to protection, isn't it? So now that the floodgates have been released, like Fox has been able to use it. And one of the interesting things about the actual arch on that 32 stepcast fork is that it was designed with the help of AI. So I think Fox defined some parameters and some targets for the stiffness and weight, etc. What came out of this new software that they used was this kind of weird lattice work arch, reverse arch. So it's quite an organic kind of shape. I mean, it's an interesting sort of concept. Will totally. Other manufacturers start using this for their bikes and other products and stuff? Who knows?
So Danny, if someone wants a gold fork, can they get one, or is it just for like athletes that are going to the Olympics?
So for now, it's athletes only, but in the summer it will be available to buy. Okay. Not going to have to rush too much to get it because there's like almost 2,000 of every single model of fork.
Okay, because it's their anniversary, right?
50th anniversary of Fox. So 1974, the year I was born.
No way.
Yeah. They're doing 1,974 of each model, so 32, 34, 36, 38, 40. And you'll get like a little credit card, kind of unique numbered card to go with it. I think there's going to be a little bit of an upcharge maybe 50 to $100. And also like a sticker sheet so you can match your shock to your fork as well.
So Danny, that leads us nicely on to another patent that's expired, and that's the bypass port on like air springs. So I was at a launch recently with a company that has a backwards arch too, and they've got some new products coming, and they were sort of saying that, you know, you're going to see some other brands using our fork design, and then they went on to tell me about their shock and how it has a new bypass port. And I was like, oh, well, hold on a second, because basically Fox and RockShox have had almost like a gentleman's agreement for the bypass port on air forks and shocks. That patent's expired, so that's now open to other brands. So we're going to see other brands coming with shocks that have self-equalizing negative air springs. And in fact, DVO has just brought out a fork called the Onyx D138. And do you remember like DVO always had the OTT, the off-the-top thing, which was a coil negative spring? They now have an SL air spring option, which has a bypass port.
Okay.
That's going to make that fork feel so much better.
Yeah. So I guess, you know, what goes around comes around.
Exactly. You know, you get a period of time where your IP is protected, and then it becomes open source and everyone can use it.
Yeah.
So.
And that's been happening in the bike industry for a long time. I mean, things like the horse link and stuff, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So next up, we should talk a little bit about the Norco Range VLT and Sight VLT.
So VLT stands for Volt?
Yeah, exactly. So they come with the Bosch CX motor. They've got 750 watt-hour batteries, yada yada.
So full-powered e-bikes with high-pivot idler suspension designs.
With high-pivot idler suspension designs. One interesting thing is that they've clocked the motor, they've rotated the motor quite kind of almost vertically. So that means that they can have a fully enclosed down tube and you can just slide out the battery
So basically like a White, like a Canyon,
Specialized.
like a Specialized. Yeah,
Exactly.
It's one of the best ways to do it.
Yeah. Now, they're not the only people with a high pivot idler e-bike from Canada. Rocky Mountain also has one, doesn't they?
Yeah.
The interesting thing with Rocky is that the system is driven off the idler.
Yeah, the idler is basically the motor.
Yeah.
The output source from the motor.
Exactly. Whereas on the Norco, it's a standard, you know, kind of crank BB driven mid-drive motor.
So basically it's just more like the regular Sight and Range with just a motor and battery attached.
Yeah, exactly. Travel-wise, the Range is the big hitter, 180 front, 170 rear, like a sort of big free-ridey sort of bike. The Sight is more all mountain. I think all mountains are new. There's words coming back into to use again. 160 front, 150 rear.
So Danny, like, can you actually get Norcos in the UK?
So Silverfish are now the distributor of Norco in the UK.
Excellent.
I haven't heard whether these are going to be available yet, but I know that the lightweight e-bike that they came out with the Bosch SX motor, that's available. The Sight and the Optic are available.
We've had the analog bikes.
One would imagine that there'll be limited numbers of these, hopefully.
Okay. So that leads us on to another Canadian brand with patchy availability in the UK, Rocky Mountain.
Yeah. They've got a new enduro bike, the Rocky Mountain Altitude.
Yeah, looks really cool, right?
It looks really cool. I don't know whether it's available in the UK. I know that the distributor in the UK brings the e-bikes in. We haven't heard anything about UK pricing or anything on this, but looks really cool. It uses virtual pivot design now. So another patent expiration that's allowed them to use that system. They haven't taken the sort of Santa Cruz route. They've taken the intense route. So the lower link is concentric to the bottom bracket. It's available in carbon and aluminium. There's 29ers, there's mullet bikes, it's adjustable geometry.
Everything you'd expect on a modern enduro bike, right?
Exactly, yeah, internal storage, everything. Looks really cool. Who knows, hopefully we'd like to get hold of one.
We'd love to get hold of one, yeah.
We've ridden the Intense Tracer, you love that bike, It'd be a really good matchup.
Yeah, for a head-to-head test, it'd be ideal, right?
Yeah, totally.
Fingers crossed we can get one from across the pond, as they say, right? Yeah.
So we've glossed over a lot of tech there, a lot of new products, but if you're interested in finding out more details, really drilling down into the information on this stuff, it's all on the MBR website, mbr.co.uk.